This story is meant to inform and inspire, not to provide medical advice. Something whispered inside her chest as the sun crept through the blinds, and she wondered if today might feel different. Mary eased herself out of bed, careful not to wake the hum of the city beyond her window. The floor was cool under her bare feet, a small shock that made her gasp softly, a tiny reminder that time had layered itself over her body in ways she sometimes forgot until she noticed a creak or a twinge. She shuffled toward the kitchen, the steam of her morning coffee curling upward like a fragile ribbon of warmth, and paused. For a moment, she simply breathed, feeling the subtle pull of gravity on her joints, the gentle protest of shoulders and hips that used to bend without thought. It was one of those mornings when ordinary tasks seemed like small adventures. Opening the fridge, reaching for the milk, and stretching to reach the coffee mug, the motions themselves felt heavier, slower, more deliberate. And yet, as she reached, she remembered a quiet practice she had read about from elders in Japan, the gentle morning stretch, performed with patience and attention rather than intensity. Just a few movements, done slowly, could awaken muscles that had grown stiff from years of life lived fully. Mary had never considered herself particularly disciplined. Exercise felt like a chore, a word heavy with expectation. But this was different. This was curiosity, a personal experiment born from watching her neighbor, Mrs. Tanaka, carefully bend, twist, and extend herself each morning in the soft dawn. Mrs. Tanaka, 82, had the lightness of someone who had learned to carry her years gracefully without demanding her body perform miracles. Mary's personal reflection was simple. What if small daily movements could make mornings like this feel lighter, less like a battle with one's own body? As she lifted her arms overhead, she imagined reaching not just toward the ceiling, but toward the possibility of ease. According to many studies, gentle daily stretching can maintain joint mobility and reduce stiffness, especially for those navigating the middle decades of life. But Mary didn't need numbers to see it. The sensation of muscles awakening, of tension melting in slow increments, spoke for itself. Her body felt like an old wooden door slowly swinging open, resistant at first but creaking beautifully once it moved. She began with her shoulders, small rotations forward, then back, imagining them loosening like soft clay being kneaded by invisible hands. Next, she extended her arms and gently twisted at the waist, feeling her spine articulate, vertebra by vertebra, like the delicate pages of a well-loved book. Each motion was a whisper of intention rather than a demand, a promise rather than a prescription. Her cat, Oliver, watched from the counter, tail flicking with interest, as if approving of the quiet ritual. Mary smiled, acknowledging that even small creatures notice the rhythm of human movement. In these moments, stretching became less about fitness and more about awareness, a dialogue between her body and the morning light. The practical steps were deceptively simple. First, she committed to 5 minutes of slow stretches every morning before breakfast. Second, she focused on deep breaths, letting each inhale lift her ribs gently and each exhale release the day's accumulated tension. Finally, she listened, truly listened to her body, noticing which muscles begged for attention and which responded readily. No rush, no goals except presence. By the time she reached for her coffee again, the familiar stiffness had softened. She felt a subtle warmth in her shoulders and a lightness in her step as she moved toward the window. Outside, the neighborhood was waking, mail trucks rumbling, leaves rustling in the breeze, but Mary felt as if she were moving in a slightly different rhythm, one attuned to her own body's quiet signals rather than the city's insistence on hurry. A thought surfaced, philosophical yet simple. We often underestimate the power of small, consistent gestures. A body treated gently becomes a companion rather than a burden. She wondered if this, perhaps, was the hidden wisdom behind the movements of elders. She admired the quiet accumulation of daily care, repeated not for achievement, but for life itself. Mary poured the last drops of coffee, savoring the steam and aroma. "It's amazing," she muttered aloud, "how a few minutes can change everything." Her reflection wasn't scientific, nor did it promise cures. It was personal, intimate, a recognition of what she felt and observed. Tiny movements had given her morning a new lightness, a sense that her body, while older, was still capable of dialogue and delight. If anyone asked, she would say, "I just do a few stretches each morning. Nothing fancy, but it feels good." She realized that hope didn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it was in the slow arc of arms overhead, the gentle rotation of shoulders, the mindful pause to breathe and observe. That was enough. Final later, Mennerzal. Final later. Mary took her first sip of coffee, letting warmth and caffeine mingle with the quiet pride of a morning well started. Her gaze drifted to the window, noticing shadows and sunlight playing across the sidewalk. Children's laughter carried faintly on the breeze. Life, she reflected, seemed less like a struggle in these small rituals, and more like a series of invitations to notice, breathe, and move. The steam curled upward like a secret, and John felt a rare calm settle over his busy mind. John sat at his small kitchen table, sunlight spilling across a worn oak surface, and watched the water rise to a gentle boil. It was a morning ritual he'd almost forgotten in the rush of work, emails, errands, and the constant hum of life outside his window. But recently, inspired by something he had read about Japanese elders, he decided to try something different. A mindful tea pause. Not hurried, not multitasked, just a moment dedicated to observing the simple act of brewing and sipping. He poured the hot water over the tea leaves, noticing the delicate dance of steam and fragrance. The aroma filled the kitchen, a subtle but undeniable reminder of presence. He could feel his shoulders soften as he inhaled, the weight of yesterday's errands loosening slightly. "It's strange," he muttered, "how something so simple can feel almost luxurious." It was a quiet personal reflection, a small rebellion against the constant pressure to do, achieve, or produce. John remembered watching Mrs. Sato, a neighbor in her late 70s, perform her tea ritual each morning. She moved slowly, deliberately, almost ceremoniously, pouring water over leaves, lifting the cup, inhaling deeply before taking her first sip. Her movements weren't about performance, they were about awareness, patience, and honoring the body and mind alike. John realized he had always associated movement with exercise, with sweat and effort, yet here was an alternative. Slow, intentional action that encouraged circulation, posture, and mental focus without demanding more than presence. The personal story unfolded as John raised his cup to his lips, savoring the warmth as it spread through him. His mind wandered briefly to the stiffness in his back, a familiar companion in midlife, and he realized that this pause wasn't just soothing for the mind, it also invited subtle physical benefits. According to many studies, mindful slow movements can improve circulation, enhance balance, and even relieve tension accumulated over decades of sitting or repetitive work. But John didn't need data to appreciate it. He felt it. A gentle shift, like sunlight inching across the floorboards. A quiet reminder that the body responded to care, even in small gestures. He experimented with a few subtle adjustments. Sitting up a little straighter, he allowed his spine to lengthen, imagining it like a soft bamboo stalk rising toward the sun. Rolling his shoulders slowly, he felt muscles release, knots unthreading as if they had been patiently waiting for this tiny invitation. Each sip of tea became an exercise in mindfulness, a fusion of comfort and functional movement. The practical solutions were elegant in their simplicity. First, he committed to 5 minutes each morning for a mindful beverage ritual, choosing tea, coffee, or even just warm water. Second, he incorporated gentle stretches. While waiting for water to boil, or the tea to steep, shoulder rolls, neck rotations, and subtle twists at the waist. Third, he focused on breathing, inhaling with each lift of the cup and exhaling fully between sips. These small movements were easy to do, required no equipment, and could fit into even the busiest mornings. John's reflection deepened as he observed the quiet neighborhood from his window. Birds flitted from branch to branch, leaves trembled in the light breeze, and the distant laughter of children at play reminded him that life's rhythm continued, regardless of age or circumstance. And yet, in this small ceremony, he found a sense of agency. Even in moments of stillness, he could nurture his body, ease his mind, and honor the passage of time. A philosophical note emerged naturally, not heavy-handed but woven into the story. Sometimes, slowing down is the most radical form of care we can offer ourselves. Presence can be as powerful as movement. John smiled, realizing that what he had dismissed for so long as a simple cup of tea was actually a bridge, a gentle pathway connecting body, mind, and the quiet wisdom of elders. He noticed a subtle glow in his skin, a lightness in his chest, and a newfound alertness in his thoughts. Movement didn't always have to be vigorous or structured to matter. It could be small, repeated, mindful, and still deliver a sense of vitality. John felt hope bloom quietly in his chest, not loud or dramatic, but steady and enduring. The day beckoned with its usual demands, yet John felt differently as he lifted his cup for the final sip. There was a small but undeniable satisfaction in this tiny, intentional pause. A movement practiced slowly, almost imperceptibly, had reminded him of the value of presence, attention, and self-care. He knew that if he continued these few simple steps, mornings would gradually transform from rushed routines into moments of quiet rejuvenation. He set the cup down gently, running his fingers along its smooth curve. "It's amazing," he said aloud, "how slowing down a little can shift so much inside." And indeed, it had a subtle alignment of posture, a softening of tension, a quiet joy in the ordinary act of drinking tea. John realized that life's small rituals often carried the largest rewards. Every step felt heavier than it should, yet something in her chest nudged her to keep moving. Lucy laced up her sneakers, the soft morning light spilling through the front door and catching the edges of her worn shoelaces. The neighborhood was quiet, birds chirping softly, a faint breeze teasing the maple leaves overhead. She stepped outside, feeling the cool pavement under her feet and the subtle tension in her knees. Each stride reminded her that her body had carried decades of memories, triumphs, and small aches along the way. She began walking slowly, deliberately, remembering an article she had read about Japanese elders and their mindful walking practices. They didn't rush, they didn't jog with urgency, and they certainly didn't ignore the way their bodies felt with each movement. Instead, every step was intentional, a subtle dialogue between foot, muscle, and earth. Lucy thought about how she had spent years moving quickly through life, hurried, distracted, unaware of the small signals her body sent her, and how refreshing it was to slow down and notice. Her personal reflection revealed more than just curiosity. "I've walked these streets hundreds of times, yet I've never truly felt them beneath my feet," she thought. She noticed how her heel touched first, the slight roll to the ball of her foot, and the gentle push off with her toes. Her posture shifted, as she imagined a string lifting her head, elongating her spine, easing tension in her back. The world outside became less of a blur and more of a cinematic frame. A red bicycle leaning against a fence, the smell of freshly cut grass, a neighbor's cat stretching lazily on the sidewalk. Lucy's mini-story continued as she rounded the corner to the park. The rhythm of her steps became almost meditative, like the ticking of a calm clock, each footfall a punctuation of presence. According to many studies, deliberate, mindful walking can improve balance, circulation, and mental clarity, especially in midlife and beyond. But for Lucy, it wasn't about science. It was about how her body felt when she truly noticed each step, each breath, each subtle sway of her arms. Her legs seemed to remember forgotten strength, her heart a gentle drum of vitality. The metaphor became clear. The body was like a finely tuned car, and walking mindfully was the careful maintenance it craved. Ignoring signals, rushing steps, or letting fatigue dictate motion was like running the engine too long without oil wear and tear accumulated silently. But slowing down, engaging the muscles deliberately, aligning movement with attention, allowed the body to function smoothly, to enjoy the ride rather than merely endure it. Practical solutions unfolded naturally in Lucy's mind. First, she committed to 10 minutes of mindful walking every morning, noticing each step and each posture adjustment. Second, she added subtle arm swings, imagining her shoulders opening and closing like gates to circulation and energy. Third, she practiced small pauses every few blocks, standing tall, taking a deep breath, and feeling her spine lengthen before continuing. These were tiny actions, easy to integrate into daily life, yet profound in their cumulative effect. Lucy noticed how these adjustments altered more than just her stride. Her thoughts felt clearer, sharper, less cluttered by the noise of constant planning. She smiled faintly as a jogger passed, keeping pace but unaware of the deliberate artistry in her own walking. Movement, she realized, could be a form of meditation, a personal dialogue between body and environment, a quiet celebration of vitality rather than a performance judged by speed or endurance. As she rounded back toward her house, she observed a small detail that made her heart lift. A single dandelion pushed through a crack in the sidewalk. It was stubborn and delicate at once, thriving in its tiny space against all odds. Resilience, she thought, sometimes shows up in the smallest, most overlooked places. It was a reflection of the very approach she was learning to adopt toward her own body. Gentle, persistent, patient, and attentive. When she stepped back onto her porch, Lucy felt a lightness she hadn't anticipated. Her knees weren't screaming, her hips weren't tight, and her mind carried a quiet, steady rhythm like a soft drum accompanying her steps. She realized that mindful walking wasn't about adding exercise to her day, it was about restoring presence, honoring her body, and reclaiming the simple joy of movement that had been buried under years of distraction. Lucy poured herself a glass of water, feeling the muscles in her legs hum with subtle energy. "It's incredible," she whispered, "how just paying attention to each step can change how you feel." The lesson lingered. Small, intentional movements, repeated daily, could shift energy, clarity, and mood. They could make her mornings lighter, her body stronger, and her spirit quietly hopeful. He hesitated at the frame, as if the doorway itself held a secret he was just beginning to understand. Bill stood in his hallway, toes just behind the threshold of the doorway, palms pressed gently against the frame. He had noticed, over the past few weeks, a nagging stiffness in his shoulders and upper back, a subtle reminder that the body's flexibility didn't last forever. But today, he paused. Instead of rushing through the usual routine of heading to the kitchen or stepping outside, he focused on this simple doorway stretch, one he had seen his Japanese neighbor perform each morning with quiet grace. The light from the living room spilled across his arms, illuminating the faint tremble in his hands as he lifted them. It wasn't just a stretch, it was a personal moment of reflection. Why had I never tried something so simple before, he wondered. There was suspense in this realization, a small curiosity tinged with humility. His body, accustomed to long hours at a desk and years of commuting, responded slowly, as if testing whether it could trust him to treat it kindly. He bent slightly forward, pressing chest and shoulders gently toward the doorway, and felt a release ripple across his upper back. For a moment, he closed his eyes, imagining his shoulder blades as old wooden shutters, rusted in place over decades of work and tension. With careful nudges, he could open them, just a little, and feel the air pass through freely. It was a simple metaphor, yet vivid. The body, like the house he lived in, benefited from attention and care. According to many studies, gentle stretching of the chest and shoulders can improve posture, ease tension, and enhance circulation, especially in adults over 50. Bill didn't need the numbers to feel the difference. He felt the subtle warmth in his muscles, the slight elongation in his spine, the quiet satisfaction of motion that wasn't rushed or forced. Every small adjustment felt like reclaiming a piece of freedom he hadn't realized he had lost. The personal storytelling continued as he experimented with slight variations. One hand higher, a gentle twist of the torso, a slow lean into the stretch. Each movement revealed small insights. A stubborn knot in the right shoulder, a hip that needed more attention, a breath that had been trapped in the chest finally released. It was as if the doorway itself had become a teacher, guiding him to notice and honor his body's signals without judgment. Practical, gentle solutions unfolded naturally. First, he committed to performing this doorway stretch every morning before breakfast, even if just for a minute or two. Second, he integrated subtle rotations and chest openings, while waiting for the kettle to boil or the toast to pop. Third, he focused on slow, mindful breathing, inhaling to expand the chest and exhaling to let tension flow down and out. These small actions were effortless, safe, and immediately rewarding, a perfect ritual for seniors seeking mobility without strain. Bill's reflection deepened as he felt the lightness returning to his shoulders. He thought about life in general, how small pauses, tiny, deliberate actions, often created ripple effects far beyond their immediate purpose. Just as a doorway could support his stretch, the structure of daily rituals could support his health, energy, and even mood. The analogy felt natural, almost poetic. Life, like a well-built house, responded to small, careful maintenance. He noticed details he had never appreciated before: the warm morning sun hitting the hallway floor, the faint smell of brewing coffee from the kitchen, the rhythmic tick of the wall clock. These ordinary moments felt richer, more cinematic, simply because he had slowed down, aligned his body, and paid attention. Movement wasn't just physical, it became emotional, mindful, and grounding. By the time he stepped away from the doorway, Bill felt more upright, lighter, and subtly energized. His morning had begun with intention, and the simple act of stretching had set the tone for the rest of his day. He realized that small, deliberate movements like this didn't just preserve flexibility, they nurtured confidence, presence, and hope. As he poured his coffee, he thought aloud, "It's funny how something so small can make mornings feel like a fresh start." The warmth of the mug in his hands mirrored the warmth spreading through his body. He smiled, noticing that empowerment often came in quiet forms: a gentle stretch, a mindful breath, or a few seconds of intentional focus. The soft hum of the fridge became her cue, and she realized balance was hiding in plain sight. Anne rested her hands lightly on the edge of the kitchen counter, feeling its cool surface against her palms. The morning sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the simple ritual of preparing breakfast. Eggs sizzled in the pan, the aroma mingling with the faint scent of coffee, and for a moment she paused, not out of fatigue, but curiosity. She had noticed subtle instability in her ankles over the past few months, a hesitation in her step that had her reconsidering how she moved through her home. Today, she decided to try a small, Japanese-inspired practice she had read about: gentle balancing exercises right at the counter. She shifted her weight onto her left leg, lifting the right foot slightly off the ground. A small thrill of awareness ran through her body, how delicate and intricate the muscles in her legs and core were, working together to maintain equilibrium. It was a personal reflection she hadn't considered before. "I take balance for granted until I notice it slipping." She laughed softly at herself, realizing that something as ordinary as making breakfast could become an opportunity for movement and mindfulness. Anne's mini-story unfolded as she experimented further. She raised her lifted foot a few inches, then back down, letting her muscles tremble slightly as they adjusted. She imagined her body as a finely tuned workbench, each movement carefully calibrated, every adjustment contributing to the stability and function of the whole. According to many studies, standing balance exercises, even for just a few minutes a day, can improve posture, strengthen stabilizing muscles, and reduce the subtle risks of falls in older adults. Yet, Anne didn't need statistics to feel the effect. She noticed an immediate sense of groundedness, a connection between her feet, legs, and spine that had been dulled by routine. The metaphor felt vivid. The body, like a countertop set up in a kitchen, needed a stable foundation to function well. If one piece wobbled, the rest adjusted, sometimes imperfectly. By intentionally practicing balance in small, controlled movements, Anne could reinforce the foundation without overexertion or strain. She found herself smiling, noting that even small daily rituals could serve as exercises in resilience, strength, and presence. Practical solutions flowed naturally. First, she committed to performing balance exercises each morning while preparing breakfast, shifting weight from one leg to the other, lifting each foot slightly, and engaging her core. Second, she incorporated gentle movements for her arms and shoulders while holding the counter, creating a subtle flow of strength and alignment. Third, she paired the movements with mindful breathing, inhaling as she lifted her foot and exhaling as she grounded herself. These steps were simple, approachable, and completely safe for seniors seeking gentle ways to maintain stability. Anne's reflection deepened as she observed the ordinary details of her kitchen. The sunlight caught the edge of a ceramic mug, highlighting a small chip she had ignored for years. Steam from the pan swirled upward, reminding her that life often carried beauty in the overlooked moments. She realized that balance wasn't just about the body, it was also about attention, awareness, and gentle practice. Just as she nurtured stability physically, she could nurture calm and clarity mentally, one deliberate movement at a time. She noticed the subtle strengthening in her legs, the way her posture adjusted naturally, and the quiet satisfaction that arose from these mindful motions. The practice transformed an ordinary morning into a cinematic, almost meditative experience. She felt empowered not through strenuous exercise, but through consistency, attention, and the understanding that even small movements mattered. Anne poured a cup of tea, feeling the warmth seep into her hands. Reflecting on the small victories of the morning, she thought, "I don't need to do everything at once, just a few deliberate moments of care each day can shift the way I move and feel." Her chest lifted slightly, not from exertion, but from the confidence that her body could respond positively to gentle guidance. A soft philosophical note emerged naturally. Life, like balance, is rarely about perfection. It's about small adjustments, awareness, and a willingness to engage with what's right in front of us. Anne smiled at the thought, realizing that the counter had become more than furniture. It was a partner in her journey toward mindful movement and gentle strength. She sipped her tea, feeling a lightness in her steps as she moved to tidy the counter. Her body, she realized, was responsive, capable, and surprisingly grateful for the attention she had given it, even in such a small, ordinary space. The hum of the fridge, once background noise, now felt like a cue to pause, stretch, and reconnect with her body each day. The soil smelled of rain and promise, and she realized her hands remembered what her body had forgotten. Helen knelt beside her flower bed, the earth cool and pliant beneath her fingers. Tiny green shoots peeked from the soil, fragile yet determined, and she felt a quiet joy as she brushed away fallen leaves. Her knees protested gently, a reminder that bending and squatting no longer came as easily as they had in her 40s. Yet, as she leaned into the task, she discovered a rhythm one her Japanese neighbors had called garden bending rituals, a series of small, deliberate movements, designed to stretch, strengthen, and awaken the body naturally. She paused for a moment, inhaling the scent of soil and wet petals, noticing how the sunlight dappled through the leaves. I've always loved gardening, she thought, but I've never thought of it as exercise. Today, however, she felt every muscle awaken, calves stretching as she rose on tiptoes to reach a branch, shoulders loosening as she pulled weeds gently, and a subtle twist in her torso each time she leaned to tuck a seedling into the ground. It was a personal reflection, a quiet revelation that daily activity didn't have to come from a gym, it could come from life itself. Helen's mini-story unfolded further when her granddaughter, Emily, crouched beside her, asking curious questions about the tiny buds. "Grandma, how do you make the flowers grow so straight?" Emily's eyes sparkled with innocent wonder. Helen smiled, realizing that these garden movements weren't just about her body, they were about teaching patience, mindfulness, and the subtle power of routine. According to many studies, bending, squatting, and reaching in controlled ways can improve flexibility, joint health, and core strength, especially for older adults. But Helen didn't need the science to feel it. She felt it in the warmth spreading through her back, the gentle stretch in her hips, and the grounding sensation of hands in the soil. The metaphor became vivid. The body was like a garden itself. Neglected, it could grow stiff and brittle, tangled in habits that limited movement. But with consistent care, small stretches, intentional bends, mindful posture, it could flourish. Flexible and strong, capable of growth and resilience. Every weed pulled, every seed tucked, and every stretch performed became part of a daily ritual of nurturing both body and spirit. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally from Helen's routine. First, she committed to spending 10 to 15 minutes each morning tending her garden with intentional movements. Squats, light lunges, torso twists, and shoulder stretches incorporated into the flow of gardening. Second, she used mindful breathing, inhaling as she bent and exhaling as she rose, creating a rhythm that coordinated movement with awareness. Third, she allowed herself moments of observation, pausing to notice her posture and adjust as needed, small corrections that maintained alignment without forcing effort. These steps were safe, practical, and deeply satisfying for seniors seeking gentle ways to maintain mobility. As she straightened, brushing dirt from her hands, Helen observed details. She often overlooked the delicate curve of a petal, the way sunlight made the morning dew glisten, the soft rustle of leaves overhead. Life, she reflected, was like these movements. Subtle, incremental, yet cumulatively transformative. Each deliberate bend and stretch was a conversation with her body, a reminder that age didn't have to diminish vitality if she approached it with care and intention. Helen noticed how her muscles responded differently than they had a few weeks ago. Her hamstrings felt longer, her back less tense, and her shoulders more relaxed. The garden had become more than a place to grow flowers, it had become a studio for gentle exercise, a meditation space, and a source of joy. She realized that these small movements, when repeated daily, could shift energy, flexibility, and even mood, one intentional bend at a time. She straightened fully and looked at the row of newly planted seeds, feeling pride and quiet empowerment. "It's remarkable," she whispered to herself, how tending to the garden tends to me as well. The realization brought a warm, hopeful sensation, proof that even small rituals, when practiced consistently, could nurture the body, mind, and spirit simultaneously. A soft philosophical note emerged. Growth, whether in plants or in ourselves, is rarely sudden. It thrives in quiet consistency, patience, and attention. Helen smiled, feeling a deep connection between her daily actions and the subtle yet profound shifts in her own vitality. Each step whispered encouragement, and he realized climbing could be quiet triumphs, not just exercise. Tom stood at the foot of the staircase, hands resting lightly on the railing, sunlight filtering through the window to illuminate each wooden step. He had noticed recently that his legs felt a bit slower, his balance less certain, and the usual climb from the living room to the bedroom required more attention than it once had. But today, he decided to transform that ordinary ascent into a mindful mini-lift, inspired by simple Japanese elder movements, small, intentional exercises integrated seamlessly into daily life. He lifted one foot, placing it carefully on the first step, and felt the subtle engagement of calves, quads, and core muscles. A quiet thrill ran through him. I've climbed these stairs thousands of times, yet I've never really noticed my body doing the work. He smiled to himself, realizing that every step could be an opportunity for strength, awareness, and presence, rather than mere motion. Tom's mini-story unfolded further as he continued, alternating feet slowly, pressing through heels, elongating his spine, and lifting his chest. Each mini-lift brought a gentle challenge, a small tension that spoke to muscles he had long ignored. According to many studies, regular stair climbing, even in small increments, can improve cardiovascular health, leg strength, and balance, particularly for adults over 50. But Tom didn't need science to feel it. He felt warmth in his thighs, engagement in his core, and the grounding connection of feet on wood with each step. The metaphor for Tom was vivid. Life was like a staircase. Progress didn't have to be rushed or dramatic. Small, deliberate steps could accumulate into meaningful change. Each cautious lift represented not only physical strength but also persistence, patience, and subtle courage, the courage to honor the body's current state while gently expanding its capacity. Practical, gentle solutions unfolded naturally. First, he committed to performing 2 to 3 mini-lift repetitions per day, ascending and descending slowly with mindful attention. Second, he engaged his core and maintained an upright posture, imagining a string gently lifting the crown of his head. Third, he paired each step with a controlled inhale and exhale, coordinating breath with movement to enhance balance and focus. These actions were safe, easy to integrate, and highly effective for maintaining mobility in older adults. As he reached the top of the stairs, Tom paused, hands lightly resting on the railing, noticing the subtle shifts in his body. His legs felt more responsive, his back more aligned, and his chest carried a small lift of quiet triumph. The ordinary staircase had become a personal training ground, a daily opportunity to reclaim strength, attention, and energy. He glanced out the window, observing the world outside. A neighbor watering flowers, birds hopping along the fence, sunlight glittering on the roof across the street. These moments, once background noise, now felt richer, cinematic, almost celebratory. Tom realized that mini-lifts were more than exercise. They were invitations to notice, to connect, and to honor the body's remarkable resilience. A philosophical note surfaced naturally. Sometimes the smallest steps, repeated consistently, create the biggest shifts. Strength is often found in gentle persistence rather than grand gestures. Tom smiled, feeling the truth of it ripple through his legs and spine, a quiet gratitude for the simple act of mindful movement. Descending the stairs slowly, he imagined his body as a gentle wave, rising and lowering with ease, each step reinforcing awareness and control. By integrating mini-lifts into his daily routine, he was cultivating strength, balance, and confidence, proving that ordinary structures in the home, like stairs, could become instruments of wellness and subtle joy. As he reached the bottom, he rested a hand on the railing and exhaled, feeling a quiet energy settle into his chest. "It's incredible," he whispered, "how something as ordinary as a staircase can teach you presence, patience, and strength." And indeed, it had a small but lasting reminder that mindful movement could transform the everyday into something meaningful and empowering. The first golden rays touched her shoulders, and she felt tension melt like morning mist. Margaret stepped onto her balcony, the early sun warming her skin, and painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. She inhaled deeply, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs, and allowed herself a rare moment of stillness before the day began. For weeks, she had noticed stiffness in her shoulders, a subtle tightness that made even simple movements like reaching for a mug or turning to greet a neighbor slightly uncomfortable. Today, inspired by a Japanese elder routine she had read about, she decided to try shoulder circles at sunrise, a small, deliberate exercise designed to release tension, improve circulation, and awaken the body. She lifted her shoulders slowly, imagining the tight muscles as ropes coiled too tightly for too long. With each controlled rotation forward and back, she felt the coils loosen, the tension dissolving like dew evaporating in the warmth of the sun. It was a gentle but vivid reminder that her body, like the world around her, responded to attention and care. I've carried so much weight, unseen, for years, she thought, and I'm only now learning to notice it. Margaret's mini-story unfolded as she continued, adding small arm movements in tandem with the circles, her fingers reaching outward as if brushing away invisible burdens. Her reflection deepened. There's a rhythm to this slow, deliberate, and holy mind. According to many studies, gentle shoulder rotations improve flexibility, reduce stiffness, and enhance blood flow, particularly in adults over 50. Yet Margaret wasn't focused on science. She was attuned to the sensations, noticing subtle warmth in her deltoids, a release across her upper back, and a lightness in her neck she hadn't felt in years. The metaphor emerged naturally. The body was like a flag in a gentle breeze. When stiff and bound, it barely moved. When free and intentional, it danced with grace and fluidity. Each circle of her shoulders became a small wind, coaxing energy through her arms, chest, and back, a quiet celebration of motion and presence. Practical, gentle solutions unfolded seamlessly. First, Margaret committed to performing shoulder circles each morning, as soon as sunlight touched her balcony or window. Second, she synchronized her breath with each movement, inhaling as shoulders lifted, exhaling as they rolled back, creating a rhythm that connected body and mind. Third, she added subtle variations over time, experimenting with small diagonal lifts or tiny stretches of her chest and upper back, ensuring the routine remained safe, engaging, and effective. These were movements anyone could integrate into a morning ritual, no gym required, yet profoundly nourishing for joints and posture. Margaret noticed how this simple act transformed more than her shoulders. She felt a gentle sense of agency, a reminder that small, deliberate actions had the power to shift not only the body, but also the mind. The morning air, the warmth of sunlight, and the subtle energy in her muscles combined to create a cinematic, mindful experience that felt both grounding and liberating. She observed details she hadn't before, the way birds dipped through the golden sky, the soft rustle of leaves in the neighbor's tree, the distant aroma of baking bread. These ordinary elements felt vibrant, cinematic, and deeply intertwined with her practice. Each shoulder circle became a meditation, a deliberate interaction with both her body and the world around her. By the time she finished her rotations, Margaret felt uplifted, lighter, and quietly empowered. The stiffness that had once dictated her mornings had softened, replaced by awareness, intention, and hope. She realized that consistent, gentle movement combined with attention and mindfulness could cultivate both physical comfort and emotional clarity. A small philosophical note lingered in her mind. Movement is not merely motion, it is an act of presence, a conversation with the body, and a practice in patience. Margaret smiled, knowing that these few minutes at sunrise held more than physical benefit. They carried a lesson in gentle resilience, self-care, and mindful living. As she sipped her first cup of tea, she whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how small circles can release so much weight inside and out." The morning, like her shoulders, felt freer, brighter, and more connected, a quiet reminder of the subtle power in everyday rituals. Her head tilted slowly, as if listening to a whisper from the day yet to unfold. Eleanor perched on the edge of her favorite armchair, the morning light spilling through the window and casting soft patterns on the hardwood floor. She felt a gentle tightness in her neck and upper shoulders, a reminder of decades spent typing reports, reading, and worrying over small details. Today, she decided to follow a practice she had admired in a Japanese elder routine. Simple, mindful neck rolls to release tension and awaken mobility. She tilted her head forward, then slowly to one side, feeling each vertebra adjust in its own time. The movement was deliberate, careful, almost ceremonious. With every rotation, Eleanor noticed subtle stiffness easing, a quiet sense of liberation spreading from her shoulders up through her neck. It's astonishing how much I've held here without realizing it, she reflected, a personal insight that brought a mix of humility and curiosity. For once, movement wasn't a chore, it was a discovery. Her mini-story unfolded further as she experimented with slight variations, small circles, gentle tilts, pauses to notice the alignment, and subtle breaths paired with each motion. According to many studies, gentle neck movements can enhance flexibility, reduce muscle tension, and improve circulation, particularly in older adults. Eleanor didn't need research to feel the difference. She sensed the slow, grounding release in her neck and shoulders, the subtle warmth that signaled her muscles were finally waking up after years of routine tension. The metaphor became vivid. The neck, like the trunk of a tree, supports everything above it. When stiff or misaligned, even the smallest actions feel heavy, and posture falters. But with careful rotation and mindful attention, strength and fluidity return, enabling the rest of the body to move with grace and ease. Each deliberate roll was a message to her body: I see you, I honor you, and I am willing to care for you gently. Practical, gentle solutions arose naturally. First, Eleanor committed to performing neck rolls each morning, slowly and intentionally, before breakfast or any sedentary activity. Second, she paired each movement with mindful breathing, inhaling as the head lifted, exhaling as it rotated, creating a rhythm that enhanced relaxation and focus. Third, she included subtle pauses to notice alignment, ensuring the practice remained safe, deliberate, and adaptable to her body's daily needs. These small routines required no special equipment, no gym, and could easily become part of a senior-friendly daily ritual. As Eleanor continued, she became aware of details often overlooked: the soft chirping of birds outside, the faint aroma of brewing coffee, the texture of the chair beneath her legs. These ordinary moments, once background noise, now felt cinematic, deliberate, and intertwined with her mindful practice. The morning, she realized, was no longer merely a transition from night to day. It was a gentle stage for cultivating presence, flexibility, and awareness. She felt subtle changes in posture, energy, and mental clarity. The stiffness that had dictated her mornings was softening. Her head felt lighter, her shoulders less constricted, her breath freer. Eleanor reflected on how such small, intentional movements, practiced consistently, could create profound effects in everyday life, nurturing strength, confidence, and mindfulness without any strain or urgency. A soft philosophical note emerged. Flexibility, in body or mind, is cultivated through attention, patience, and consistency. Every small roll of the neck is a quiet lesson in care and presence. Eleanor smiled, appreciating the interplay between simple motion and deeper awareness, a reminder that self-care need not be complicated or intimidating. As she finished the final circle, she inhaled deeply, letting the breath settle into her chest and shoulders, and whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how something so small can ripple through the body and the day." The morning felt lighter, the day more inviting, and Eleanor's awareness of her own resilience quietly expanded. Her feet traced gentle circles in the air, as if sketching invisible pathways to freedom. Be way doer of Raiders. Frank sat comfortably in his favorite armchair, the morning sunlight streaming through the window, dust motes dancing in the golden light. He had recently noticed a subtle stiffness in his ankles and a slight wobble when standing too long. For a man who had spent decades walking the neighborhood, gardening, and chasing after grandchildren, the realization was humbling. Today, however, he decided to try a practice he had admired from Japanese elders: seated ankle circles. A gentle, focused movement to strengthen and mobilize joints without strain. He lifted his right foot slightly off the floor, flexing and rotating it slowly in a smooth circle. Each motion felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, awakening muscles and ligaments that had gone largely unnoticed for years. "I never realized how much I rely on these small joints until they speak up," he thought, a personal reflection that brought curiosity and a quiet sense of empowerment. There was suspense in his body's response, the faint warmth in his ankles, the subtle engagement of calves, and the gentle stretch along his shins reminded him that even sitting, he could nurture strength and mobility. Frank's mini-story unfolded further as he repeated the circles with his left foot, adding small variations, tracing wider circles, changing directions, and paying attention to subtle shifts in balance. According to many studies, gentle ankle rotations can improve joint flexibility, circulation, and balance, especially for older adults. He didn't need the research to feel it. The sensation of movement, combined with a deep inhale and exhale, created a quiet yet vivid sense of vitality flowing from his feet upward through his legs and core. The metaphor was clear. The ankles, like the hinges of a door, supported every step, pivot, and turn. If they were stiff or neglected, the whole structure struggled. If they were cared for and moved intentionally, the body moved with grace, stability, and confidence. Each ankle circle became a small act of maintenance, a quiet reminder that consistent attention to the smallest parts could ripple into overall wellness and resilience. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Frank committed to performing ankle circles each morning while seated, a simple ritual that required no equipment or special space. Second, he paired the movements with mindful breathing, inhaling as he lifted, exhaling as he traced the circle, synchronizing body and mind. Third, he integrated subtle variations over time, exploring the range of motion in each ankle and noticing the balance of effort versus comfort. These movements were safe, approachable, and effective for maintaining mobility, preventing stiffness, and promoting circulation for seniors. As he continued, Frank became aware of small, ordinary details. The sunlight warming the tops of his feet, the faint scent of toast from the kitchen, the rhythm of his own breath accompanying each rotation. These moments, once easily overlooked, now felt cinematic and grounding, intertwining daily life with gentle mindfulness. Each circle was not merely exercise, it was presence, attention, and quiet celebration of what his body could still do. He felt subtle changes within moments, a loosening in the ankles, a lightening of the lower legs, and a confidence in his balance that had been missing for weeks. Frank reflected on the broader meaning. Even small, consistent actions can ripple through the body, subtly transforming posture, mobility, and overall well-being. His mind and body felt aligned, as though the simple act of moving his feet in circles had awakened dormant pathways of awareness, stability, and resilience. A philosophical note emerged. Strength often begins at the foundation, sometimes literally. Nurturing small joints and daily rituals cultivates a base from which all movement grows. Frank smiled at the quiet truth, realizing that mindfulness and intention in even the smallest acts could shift both body and spirit. By the time he rested his feet on the floor, Frank felt grounded, energized, and quietly proud. The ordinary armchair, the morning light, and his simple ankle circles had transformed into a small but potent ceremony of self-care and presence. He whispered to himself, "It's amazing how something so small can ripple through the whole day." She reached sideways, feeling her spine stretch like a tree swaying in a morning breeze. "Oh, well him." Linda stood in her sunlit living room, one hand resting lightly on the back of a chair for balance, the other reaching toward the ceiling. A faint stiffness had settled along her sides over the past few months, a subtle reminder that long hours of sitting and household routines were exacting their toll. Inspired by a simple Japanese elder movement, she decided to practice gentle side bends, slow, deliberate stretches that awakened her torso, relieved tension, and strengthened core muscles without strain. She inhaled, lifting her arms slowly, then exhaled as she leaned to the side, feeling her ribs expand and her side muscles lengthen. The motion was deliberate, fluid, almost meditative. "I never realized how often I forget to reach for myself," she reflected, a personal insight mingled with curiosity. Each bend reminded her that her body still held incredible potential for flexibility and ease, if only she approached it with patience and attention. Linda's mini-story unfolded as she alternated sides, noticing subtle differences between the left and right, the slight tightness in one side, the ease in the other. According to many studies, gentle lateral stretches can improve spinal flexibility, core strength, and posture, particularly for older adults. She didn't need data to feel the effects. Each stretch delivered a warm, subtle relief through her waist, ribs, and lower back, like untangling small knots that had formed over decades of habitual movement. The metaphor became vivid. The torso was like a sail on a calm morning, flexible yet supported, capable of leaning gracefully without toppling. When neglected, the sail stiffens, limiting range and fluidity. When cared for with small, consistent movements, it bends with the breeze, responsive and strong. Each side bend became an act of dialogue with her body, a quiet acknowledgement that attention and care, even in small increments, could restore mobility and presence. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Linda committed to performing 3 to 5 slow side bends each morning, alternating sides with mindful attention. Second, she synchronized her breath with each stretch, inhaling as she lifted her arm, exhaling as she leaned, enhancing relaxation and awareness. Third, she incorporated small variations over time, gently rotating her torso at the peak of the stretch, or adding subtle reaches toward the floor, keeping the routine safe, engaging, and adaptable. These steps were accessible, no-equipment movements that could easily become a consistent ritual for seniors. As she stretched, Linda became aware of the quiet details around her. The soft hum of her refrigerator, sunlight glinting off the kitchen tiles, the distant chirp of a morning bird. These ordinary elements, once background noise, now felt cinematic, grounding, and intertwined with her gentle movements. Each side bend wasn't merely exercise, it was presence, awareness, and a celebration of what her body could still do. She noticed subtle changes in posture and energy. Her shoulders felt lighter, her spine more mobile, and her chest lifted naturally. The tightness that had once limited her movement now seemed more manageable, softened by the combination of attention, breath, and gentle stretch. Linda reflected that consistent, small movements could ripple through the body, restoring flexibility and comfort in ways that felt empowering rather than forced. A soft philosophical note emerged. Flexibility, like life itself, thrives when nurtured with patience and attention. Small, mindful adjustments create space for growth, comfort, and strength. Linda smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in her daily practice. The sun continued to rise, filling the room with warmth and light, echoing the subtle awakening in her body. By the time she lowered her arm and straightened fully, she felt energized, balanced, and quietly proud. The ordinary act of bending sideways had transformed into a small ceremony of self-care and awareness. She whispered to herself, "It's incredible how a few gentle bends can shift not only my body but my day." Her fingers traced tiny, deliberate circles, as if turning the page not only of a book but of her own day. Grace sat by the window, a well-worn novel resting in her lap, the morning light casting a warm glow across the pages. Her wrists had begun to ache after long hours of knitting, typing emails, or simply holding her book, subtle reminders that even small joints demanded attention. Today, she decided to follow a simple Japanese elder-inspired routine, performing gentle wrist circles while reading, a mindful practice to maintain flexibility, reduce stiffness, and keep her hands nimble. She lifted her right hand slightly, rotating her wrist in slow, deliberate circles, feeling the subtle engagement of tendons, muscles, and joints. It was a quiet but vivid sensation, a gentle awakening that reminded her of the countless times her hands had labored, crafted, and held loved ones close. "I never thought to nurture these small muscles," she reflected, a personal insight tinged with gratitude. Each rotation carried a sense of calm and presence, transforming a simple act into a mindful ritual. Grace's mini-story unfolded as she alternated hands, noticing differences in tension, range, and ease. According to many studies, gentle wrist rotations can enhance joint flexibility, circulation, and dexterity, particularly for older adults who spend long hours using their hands. Yet Grace didn't need research to feel the benefit. The warmth radiating from her wrists, the lightness in her fingers, and the subtle coordination with her breath created a deep, sensory awareness that felt both grounding and empowering. The metaphor became vivid. The wrists were like hinges on a treasured door, small, yet essential, to the flow of movement and life. Neglecting them risked stiffness and limitation, while mindful attention allowed fluidity, strength, and graceful motion. Each tiny circle was a conversation with her body, a gentle reminder that even the smallest joints deserved care and mindfulness. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Grace committed to performing wrist circles each time she picked up a book or sat at her desk, turning an ordinary moment into a mindful mini-practice. Second, she paired each rotation with a slow inhale and exhale, creating rhythm and awareness. Third, she explored subtle variations, slower or slightly larger circles, alternating directions to ensure comfort and effectiveness. These movements were simple, safe, and seamlessly integrated into daily life, requiring no gym, equipment, or extra time. As she continued, Grace noticed details around her that previously went unnoticed. The rustle of pages, sunlight reflecting on the edges of the book, the distant hum of birds outside. These ordinary moments became cinematic backdrops to her practice, intertwining mindfulness, gentle movement, and the quiet pleasure of a morning ritual. Each wrist circle wasn't merely exercise, it was presence, attention, and celebration of her hand's capacity to create, hold, and connect. Subtle changes became apparent quickly. Wrists felt looser, fingers lighter, and coordination smoother. The simple movement had shifted not only her joints but also her awareness, embedding a sense of capability and care. Grace reflected on the power of these small, consistent practices. Even minor attention, repeated daily, can ripple through the body, enhancing strength, flexibility, and confidence. A philosophical note surfaced naturally. The smallest parts of us, our hands, our joints, our daily gestures, often carry the greatest capacity for transformation when nurtured with patience and mindfulness. Grace smiled, recognizing that her quiet practice embodied gentle resilience, presence, and self-compassion. By the time she closed her book, she felt grounded, energized, and quietly empowered. The ordinary act of reading had become a subtle ceremony of self-care and attention. She whispered to herself, "It's amazing how a few small circles can ripple through my day, my body, and my sense of well-being." The morning, like her wrists, felt lighter, freer, and full of possibility. Each tap against the floor echoed softly, a tiny rhythm announcing the start of something alive. Henry stood near the kitchen counter, holding the edge for support, the morning sunlight casting long, warm shadows across the hardwood floor. His feet had started feeling a little heavy in the mornings, and balance sometimes wavered after a night of rest. Today, inspired by a Japanese elder movement he had seen in a short clip online, he decided to perform simple toe taps, a small, deliberate exercise designed to awaken the feet, engage the calves, and enhance circulation. He lifted his right foot slightly and tapped the floor in a slow, controlled rhythm, noticing the subtle engagement in his calf, ankle, and foot muscles. Each tap was gentle but purposeful, a quiet awakening of joints that had grown accustomed to long hours of sitting. "I never realized how much energy lives in these small movements," he thought, a personal reflection tinged with curiosity and delight. The rhythm was almost musical, each tap connecting him to his body and the morning around him. Henry's mini-story continued as he alternated feet, gradually finding a balance between speed and control. According to many studies, simple foot exercises like toe taps can improve circulation, enhance joint mobility, and even support balance in older adults. Henry didn't need numbers to feel it. The gentle pulse in his calves, the subtle lift of his arches, and the ease in his ankles spoke volumes. Every small tap felt like a celebration of his body's capacity to move, even in seemingly minor ways. The metaphor became vivid. The feet were like the roots of a tree, grounding, often unnoticed, yet essential for stability and strength. Neglect them, and the whole tree wobbles. Nurture them, and every step becomes confident, balanced, and lively. Each tap was a whisper to his body, "I notice you. I honor your foundation." Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Henry committed to performing toe taps for 1 to 2 minutes each morning, a brief yet intentional ritual that required no special space. Second, he paired each tap with a gentle inhale and exhale, syncing breath and motion to enhance awareness. Third, he experimented with slight variations, tapping faster, lifting the heel slightly, or imagining tracing small patterns on the floor to keep the exercise engaging while remaining safe. These movements were simple, accessible, and highly effective for maintaining mobility in seniors. As he tapped, Henry became aware of the details around him: sunlight glinting off the kitchen counter, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint aroma of coffee brewing. Ordinary moments felt cinematic, each tap integrating him with the rhythm of his surroundings. The exercise wasn't just physical, it was mindfulness in motion, a way to start the day with energy, focus, and presence. Subtle changes became noticeable quickly. He felt lighter on his feet, steadier in his stance, and more aware of how each movement connected to his legs and core. The small ritual shifted not only his body, but also his mental state, bringing a sense of confidence and readiness for the day ahead. Henry reflected. Consistent, small movements have a way of rippling out, strengthening not just muscles but daily routines and outlook. A gentle philosophical note emerged. Our foundations often hold hidden potential. When nurtured, even the smallest parts of the body can create remarkable effects on balance, energy, and presence. Henry smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in these morning taps. The floor, his feet, and the soft sunlight had transformed a simple exercise into a mindful, cinematic practice. By the time he paused, lifting his feet and feeling the quiet pulse in his calves, Henry felt grounded, alert, and quietly empowered. The ordinary act of tapping toes had become a small ceremony of attention, presence, and resilience. He whispered to himself, "It's amazing how a few taps can wake the whole body and the day." She lifted her knees slowly, as if drawing invisible lines through the morning light. Barbara settled into her sturdy kitchen chair, sunlight spilling over the countertop, casting warm highlights on her hands and the floor. She had begun noticing subtle weakness in her legs, a slight heaviness, when climbing stairs or standing for longer periods. Inspired by a Japanese elder routine she had read about, she decided to practice seated knee lifts, a gentle, mindful exercise to awaken leg strength, engage core muscles, and enhance circulation without strain. She lifted her right knee slowly toward her chest, feeling the subtle activation of her thigh, hip, and lower abdominal muscles. The movement was deliberate, controlled, almost ceremonial. "I never realized how much energy lives in these small motions," she thought, a personal reflection that brought a mixture of curiosity and quiet pride. Each lift was a tiny act of acknowledgement, a conversation with her body about strength, presence, and care. Barbara's mini-story unfolded as she alternated knees, gradually increasing the height of each lift while keeping her movements gentle. According to many studies, seated knee lifts improve circulation, strengthen lower body muscles, and support joint mobility, particularly for older adults. She didn't need research to feel it: the subtle warmth in her thighs, the gentle engagement of her core, and the rhythm of her breath created a vivid sense of vitality flowing through her legs. Each lift was a quiet celebration of movement she had once taken for granted. The metaphor became clear. The legs were like pillars supporting a bridge, small yet essential for stability, motion, and balance. When weakened or neglected, even routine steps feel heavy. When nurtured with consistent attention, every movement becomes confident, fluid, and connected. Each knee lift was an act of care, a gentle reminder that small, deliberate actions ripple through the body, fostering resilience and ease. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Barbara committed to performing 10 slow, mindful knee lifts per leg each morning while seated, creating a ritual that required no extra equipment or space. Second, she paired each lift with deliberate breathing, inhaling as she lifted, exhaling as she lowered, enhancing focus, stability, and calm. Third, she explored subtle variations, lifting both knees together for a moment, slightly rotating the hips at the peak, or gently extending one leg forward before lowering. These variations kept the movement safe, engaging, and adaptable for seniors. As Barbara continued, she noticed the quiet details of the morning: sunlight warming her knees, the soft clink of a spoon against her coffee mug, and the distant song of a bird outside the window. These ordinary elements now felt cinematic, intertwined with the gentle rhythm of her body. Each lift wasn't merely exercise, it was presence, attention, and a small, deliberate act of self-care. She felt subtle changes almost immediately. Her legs felt lighter, her core more engaged, and her posture more upright. The stiffness and heaviness that had once slowed her morning now softened, replaced by awareness, strength, and hope. Barbara reflected that consistent, Small movements like these could ripple through the body, enhancing strength, stability, and confidence in ways that felt empowering and gentle rather than forced. A philosophical note emerged naturally. Even small, deliberate efforts create a foundation for strength, resilience, and presence. Every lift, every careful motion, is a lesson in patience and self-care. Barbara smiled, appreciating the quiet power in her morning ritual. The sun continued to climb, filling the room with light, echoing the awakening she felt in her body and mind. By the time she completed the final lift, Barbara felt grounded, alert, and quietly proud. The ordinary act of lifting her knees had become a small ceremony of attention, presence, and self-compassion. She whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how a few gentle lifts can awaken the whole body in the day." She turned slowly, feeling her spine unwind like a ribbon caught in a soft breeze. End quote. "I can so." Margaret sat comfortably in her living room, the morning sun warming her shoulders and illuminating the dust motes floating lazily in the air. She had begun to notice stiffness along her back after years of sitting at her sewing table, reading, and watching television. Today, inspired by a Japanese elder practice, she decided to try gentle spinal twists, a mindful, slow rotation of the torso to awaken flexibility, improve circulation, and release tension without strain. She rotated her upper body gently to the right, resting her left hand lightly on her knee and her right hand behind her chair for support. Each movement was deliberate, controlled, and infused with awareness. "I never realized how much tension I've been carrying here," she reflected, a personal insight mingled with curiosity. Her back seemed to sigh with relief as muscles and vertebrae slowly eased into motion. Margaret's mini-story unfolded further as she alternated sides, noticing subtle differences between the right and left twists. According to many studies, gentle spinal rotations can enhance flexibility, support posture, and relieve minor muscular stiffness, particularly for older adults. She didn't need statistics to feel the benefit. The warmth along her spine, the gentle engagement of her core, and the subtle rhythm of her breathing created a vivid, cinematic sense of release and presence. Each twist was both physical and meditative, a quiet acknowledgement of her body's needs and capacities. The metaphor became clear. The spine was like a winding river, flexible yet strong, capable of guiding movement and energy throughout the body. When it stiffens, the flow falters. When it is nurtured, every turn and bend becomes fluid, graceful, and harmonious. Each gentle twist was a dialogue with her body, a reminder that small, consistent movements foster resilience, flexibility, and awareness. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Margaret committed to performing 3 to 5 slow spinal twists on each side every morning, a ritual easily integrated into daily life. Second, she synchronized her breath with each movement, inhaling as she lengthened her spine, exhaling as she rotated, creating a rhythm of presence and relaxation. Third, she explored subtle variations, raising one arm overhead while twisting, gently shifting her gaze to follow her movement, or lengthening the torso slightly at the peak of the rotation. These small adjustments kept the movement safe, engaging, and deeply mindful for seniors. As she twisted, Margaret noticed details that previously went unnoticed. The soft hum of a morning bird outside, the faint aroma of tea brewing, the warmth of sunlight on her hands and shoulders. These ordinary moments became intertwined with her practice, transforming a simple movement into a cinematic, mindful ritual. Each twist wasn't merely exercise, it was presence, awareness, and gentle celebration of what her body could still do. Subtle changes became apparent almost immediately. Her shoulders felt freer, her spine lighter, and her core subtly engaged. The stiffness that had limited her morning movement softened, replaced by fluidity, ease, and confidence. Margaret reflected that consistent, small, intentional actions could ripple through the body, restoring both physical comfort and mental clarity. A soft philosophical note emerged naturally. Flexibility, in body or mind, grows when approached with patience, awareness, and care. Small, deliberate movements often unlock greater strength and resilience than grand efforts ever could. Margaret smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in her gentle twists. The sun continued to climb, illuminating the room and echoing the newfound lightness she felt in her body and spirit. By the time she returned to center and sat upright, Margaret felt grounded, alert, and quietly empowered. The ordinary act of twisting her spine had become a small ceremony of attention, care, and mindful presence. She whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how gentle twists can awaken not only my back, but my day." The notes drifted through the room, and with each gentle shrug, her shoulders seemed to dance to a rhythm only she could hear. Eleanor sank into her favorite armchair, a soft blanket draped across her knees, sunlight spilling through lace curtains and catching the dust in a golden haze. Her hands rested lightly on the arms of the chair, and on the small wooden table beside her, a record player hummed quietly. Today, she decided to pair movement with music, practicing simple shoulder shrugs while listening to her favorite jazz records, a Japanese elder-inspired approach that encouraged relaxation, circulation, and subtle strengthening of the upper back and neck muscles. She lifted her shoulders slowly toward her ears, holding for a brief moment, then released them with a sigh. The motion was deliberate, controlled, almost ceremonial. "I never realized how tense these little muscles have been all these years," she reflected, a personal insight mingled with surprise and curiosity. Each shrug felt like a gentle release of decades of accumulated tension, the hours hunched over sewing, typing, and reading unraveling slowly with the soothing accompaniment of music. Eleanor's mini-story unfolded as she closed her eyes and tuned into the rhythm of the music. The trumpet's bright notes seemed to lift her shoulders higher, the soft brush of drums encouraged a slower release, and the warm hum of the double bass added grounding to each motion. According to many studies, shoulder shrugs and similar gentle upper body movements can improve circulation, reduce stiffness, and enhance posture, particularly for older adults. Eleanor didn't need scientific validation to feel the difference. The warmth radiating through her trapezius, the subtle engagement of her upper back, and the ease settling into her neck created a profound sensory awareness. Each motion became an interplay between body and sound, a cinematic meditation in motion. The metaphor was vivid. Her shoulders were like sails catching wind, sometimes stiff and rigid, sometimes flexible and responsive. Neglect them, and the body's balance falters. Nurture them, and each movement carries ease, grace, and resilience. Each shrug was a gentle reminder that the upper body, though often taken for granted, supports countless gestures, embraces, and daily motions that shape a life. She realized how much history her shoulders carried, both the literal weight of tasks and the emotional weight of memories, and that a few intentional movements could bring relief and lightness. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Eleanor committed to performing 15 to 20 slow shoulder shrugs each morning while listening to music, turning an ordinary moment into a mindful mini-ritual. Second, she synchronized the movement with her breathing, inhaling as she lifted, exhaling as she released. This rhythmic connection between breath, motion, and melody created a subtle but powerful sense of presence. Third, she experimented with variations, shrugging one shoulder at a time, rolling her shoulders gently backward after each lift, or slightly tilting her head to release tension in her neck. These small adjustments kept the routine safe, engaging, and adaptable for seniors. As she moved, Eleanor noticed details in the room she had previously overlooked. The sun illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny stars, the gentle sway of curtains in the morning breeze, and the soft tap of a bird at the window. Ordinary elements became cinematic companions to her practice, enriching the ritual with beauty, presence, and mindfulness. Each shrug wasn't merely an exercise, it was a celebration of connection between body, music, and environment. The motion intertwined physical awareness with sensory pleasure, reminding her that even the smallest gestures can create a profound sense of well-being. Subtle changes became apparent over the course of her practice. She felt her shoulders lighter, her neck less rigid, and a gentle lift in her posture. The habitual tension that had accumulated over years of repetitive movements seemed to soften, replaced by ease and fluidity. Eleanor noticed her breathing deepening, her mind quieting, and a subtle but noticeable sense of energy flowing through her upper body. She reflected on how small, consistent movements, even as simple as shoulder shrugs, could ripple through the body, restoring comfort, grace, and resilience. A philosophical note emerged naturally. Even the smallest gestures, when performed with attention and intention, can release weight we didn't know we were carrying: physical, mental, or emotional. Movement, like music, has the power to transform ordinary moments into experiences of presence and grace. Eleanor smiled, recognizing that her simple morning ritual embodied mindfulness, care, and gentle empowerment. She felt a soft joy, not in grand achievements, but in the quiet, cumulative effect of daily attention to her body and spirit. As she continued, Eleanor allowed herself to reflect on memories linked to her shoulders, the way she had carried grandchildren, the hours she had spent preparing meals for family gatherings, and the countless times she had reached to hug friends, neighbors, and loved ones. Each shrug became a symbolic release, a conscious acknowledgement of effort and history, and an invitation to embrace a lighter, more present moment. The movement became not just physical exercise, but an emotional and philosophical meditation, a reminder that life's weight, both literal and figurative, can be eased with consistent, mindful care. By the time the record ended, Eleanor felt grounded, calm, and quietly empowered. Her shoulders were lighter, her neck relaxed, and her awareness expanded, connecting her body, mind, and environment in a seamless flow. The ordinary act of shrugging her shoulders had become a cinematic ritual of self-care, reflection, and presence. She whispered to herself, "It's amazing how gentle movements and a little music can transform both body and spirit." Da Capada of 9, coming of decided, uniting. She tilted her head slowly, rolling it in a circle, as if tracing invisible constellations in the morning light. Martha sat at the kitchen table, a steaming mug of tea warming her hands, the soft hum of morning filling the room. Across from her, her longtime friend, Ruth, was recounting a story from the week before, something about a garden mishap and an unexpectedly brave squirrel. Martha listened, laughing quietly, but she also felt the familiar tightness creeping into her neck, a stiffness accumulated from decades of reading, sewing, and long phone calls. Today, she decided to practice gentle neck rolls while chatting, a simple Japanese elder-inspired exercise that engaged muscles, improved flexibility, and encouraged mindfulness, all while keeping the conversation alive. She tilted her head slowly to the right, then backward, then left, tracing a careful semicircle, feeling muscles lengthen and soften. The movement was deliberate but relaxed, synced to the rhythm of her laughter and conversation. "I never realized how much tension I hold up here," she thought, a personal reflection that brought warmth and awareness. Each slow roll felt like a gentle massage for her spine, a quiet ceremony of care and release, even as the room filled with stories, laughter, and tea-scented comfort. Martha's mini-story unfolded further as she continued, alternating directions and noticing subtle differences between her right and left sides. According to many studies, gentle neck movements, like rolls, can improve circulation, relieve muscular stiffness, and support posture, particularly for older adults. She didn't need statistics to feel it. The subtle warmth spreading across her shoulders and the light, easy stretch along her neck were tangible proof. Each motion became a connection between her body and mind, a gentle reminder that even small movements can cultivate presence, ease, and energy. The metaphor emerged naturally. Her neck was like a flexible bridge, supporting the passage between head and body, mind and action. When stiff or neglected, the bridge creaks. When nurtured, it allows the flow of movement, breath, and awareness. Each roll became a dialogue with her body, a recognition of years of service, tension, and unacknowledged effort. Martha reflected on how her neck carried not only the physical weight of her head but also the emotional weight of her experiences, stories of care, worry, and love. With each gentle rotation, she felt the tension ease, the weight lift, and a sense of freedom seep in. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Martha committed to performing 5 to 10 slow neck rolls in each direction during any conversation at home, turning ordinary moments into mindful movement. Second, she paired the rolls with natural breath, inhaling through the nose as she lifted her chin, exhaling as she rolled to the side, fostering relaxation and awareness. Third, she experimented with subtle variations, pausing at the edges of the roll to notice tight spots, rolling slightly slower on stiffer mornings, or subtly engaging the shoulder blades to release extra tension. These movements were small, safe, and accessible, yet remarkably effective in improving comfort and mobility for seniors. As Martha rolled her neck, she noticed the quiet details around her, sunlight streaming through the window and reflecting off the tea in her cup, The rhythmic tapping of a bird against the porch window, and the soft laughter of Ruth, sharing yet another anecdote. Ordinary elements became cinematic companions to her practice, enriching the experience with warmth, presence, and connection. Each neck roll wasn't merely an exercise. It was an interplay of body, mind, and social connection, demonstrating how small, intentional movements can merge seamlessly with life's ordinary pleasures. Subtle changes began to appear quickly. She felt her neck less stiff, her shoulders lighter, and her posture more upright. The tension she had carried unconsciously seemed to melt away, replaced by ease, fluidity, and awareness. Martha realized that even these tiny, often overlooked movements could ripple through her body, enhancing comfort, flexibility, and confidence in everyday life. The combination of movement and social connection created a particularly joyful and sustainable habit, proof that caring for the body need not be solitary or ritualistic in isolation. A gentle philosophical note emerged. Movement, conversation, and presence are intertwined. When we engage with one, the others flourish. Small acts of care, even while speaking or laughing, ripple out into energy, resilience, and joy. Martha smiled, appreciating the quiet power of her ritual. The ordinary act of rolling her neck while chatting had transformed into a cinematic, mindful practice, connecting body, mind, and the simple pleasures of friendship. As the conversation continued, Martha reflected on the history her neck carried, the long hours reading bedtime stories, bending over a garden bed, tending to grandchildren's scraped knees, the countless moments of listening and leaning in. Each roll became a symbolic release, a conscious acknowledgement of effort, love, and endurance, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with freedom and comfort. The exercise, though subtle, created a sense of empowerment and agency, proof that consistent, mindful attention could lighten both body and spirit. By the time the teacups were empty and the morning conversation drew to a gentle close, Martha felt lighter, more present, and quietly empowered. Her neck and shoulders were relaxed, her posture improved, and her awareness sharpened, a tangible testament to the impact of small, deliberate movements woven into everyday life. The ordinary act of rolling her neck while chatting had become a cinematic ritual of mindfulness, presence, and self-care. She whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how gentle movement and simple connection can transform both body and day." 10. 10 May, 10 May, 10 May, 10 May Arca, 10 May. He traced quiet circles in the air with his ankles, each rotation a gentle punctuation to the laughter spilling from the screen. "That's..." Frank settled into his recliner, the familiar hum of the television filling the room, a soft golden light spilling through the half-drawn curtains. Tonight's sitcom had just started, and the room smelled faintly of buttered popcorn, a small indulgence he allowed himself. He had begun noticing stiffness in his ankles after years of long walks, occasional gardening, and sitting at his desk during past jobs. Inspired by a simple Japanese elder movement he had come across online, he decided to practice ankle circles while watching TV, a gentle, low-effort exercise aimed at improving circulation, flexibility, and stability in the lower legs. He lifted his right foot slightly off the floor and began to rotate his ankle slowly, tracing a small, deliberate circle in the air. At first, the motion felt awkward, almost mechanical, but soon his ankle loosened, each rotation feeling smoother and more connected to his calf and knee. "I never realized how much these little joints can do," he reflected, a personal insight tinged with amusement and curiosity. Each circle became a rhythm, harmonizing with the laughter and dialogue from the screen, creating an almost meditative interplay of body and environment. Frank's mini-story continued as he alternated ankles, slowly increasing the size of the rotations while maintaining control. According to many studies, ankle mobility exercises such as circles can enhance blood flow, prevent stiffness, and improve balance, especially for older adults. Yet for Frank, the benefit was more tangible than scientific. He felt a subtle warmth spreading through his lower legs, a lightness in his feet, and a newfound awareness of how often he neglected these small but essential joints. Each rotation was a small act of acknowledgement, a conversation with his body about movement, vitality, and care. The metaphor became vivid. His ankles were the wheels of a well-loved bicycle, small, often taken for granted, yet essential for smooth motion. Neglect them, and the ride becomes stiff, awkward, and unstable. Nurture them, and each step carries confidence, fluidity, and resilience. Each ankle circle was a reminder that even the simplest, often overlooked joints have the power to affect the stability, mobility, and comfort of the entire body. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Frank committed to performing 10 ankle circles per foot during every television break, turning idle moments into mindful movement. Second, he paired the rotations with slow, intentional breathing, inhaling as he lifted the foot and exhaling as he completed the circle, fostering relaxation and awareness. Third, he experimented with variations, rotating the foot clockwise and counterclockwise, lifting the heel slightly to engage the calf more deeply, or flexing and pointing the toes gently between circles to increase circulation and flexibility. These small adjustments made the exercise engaging, safe, and highly adaptable for seniors. As he moved, Frank noticed details around him he had previously overlooked. The flicker of light on the TV screen reflecting softly on the carpet, the faint aroma of popcorn lingering in the air, and the subtle creak of his recliner as he shifted position. Ordinary elements became cinematic companions to his practice, transforming a simple exercise into a mindful, sensory experience. Each ankle circle was not merely an exercise, it was a quiet ritual of presence, attention, and care, reminding him that even small movements could weave seamlessly into daily life. Subtle changes became apparent within days. Frank felt his ankles less stiff, his feet more responsive, and his balance subtly improved while walking around the house. The habitual tension that had slowed his morning routines softened, replaced by lightness, confidence, and awareness. He realized that consistency, even in such a simple, low-effort movement, could ripple through his body, enhancing mobility, stability, and comfort in ways that felt empowering rather than forced. A soft philosophical reflection emerged. Our smallest joints often carry the greatest potential for freedom. When nurtured with attention and consistency, even tiny movements ripple through the body, creating stability, vitality, and presence. Frank smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in these gentle rotations. He found joy not in dramatic gestures or grand exercises, but in small, deliberate acts performed with attention, patience, and care. As he continued, Frank allowed himself to reflect on the history his ankles had carried: the long walks with his children, trips to the park, dancing at family weddings, and the many errands that shaped the rhythm of daily life. Each ankle circle became a symbolic release, a conscious acknowledgement of years of use, stress, and activity, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with fluidity and ease. The exercise, though subtle, created a sense of empowerment and agency, reminding him that even small, consistent actions could bring meaningful improvement to body and mind. By the time the episode ended, Frank felt grounded, alert, and quietly empowered. His ankles felt lighter, his steps more confident, and his awareness of his body more acute. The ordinary act of performing ankle circles while watching TV had become a cinematic ritual of self-care, presence, and mindful movement. He whispered to himself, "It's remarkable how such simple, unnoticed movements can ripple through the entire body in the day." She flexed her fingers gently, as if coaxing each joint to remember its own strength. Dorothy nestled into her favorite reading nook, a soft armchair bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. A steaming mug of chamomile tea rested on the side table, and the pages of her book felt crisp under her fingertips. She had noticed subtle stiffness and occasional aches in her hands and fingers over the past year, a lingering reminder of decades spent knitting, typing letters, and tending to household tasks. Today, she decided to practice finger stretches while reading, a gentle, Japanese elder-inspired approach to maintain mobility, reduce stiffness, and stay mindful of her hands' intricate movements. She held her book delicately, then extended each finger slowly, flexing and spreading them as if stretching invisible strings between each joint. At first, the motion felt unfamiliar and deliberate, a quiet reminder of muscles and tendons she often overlooked. "I never realized how much attention these little fingers crave," she reflected, a personal insight mingled with gratitude. Each stretch was subtle but cinematic, a slow, meditative motion that honored decades of work, care, and creativity. Dorothy's mini-story unfolded as she alternated fingers, curling them gently, flexing them outward, and massaging each joint softly. According to many studies, Finger and hand stretches can enhance circulation, maintain dexterity, and reduce stiffness, especially for older adults. Yet for Dorothy, the benefits were palpable in the warmth of her palms, the nimbleness returning to her fingertips, and the renewed confidence in her grip on both the book and her daily life. Each stretch was a quiet act of care, a mindful acknowledgement of the hands that had shaped her experiences. The metaphor became vivid. Her fingers were like the branches of an old, sturdy tree, small, delicate, but capable of movement, flexibility, and intricate tasks. Neglect them, and they stiffen. Nurture them, and each motion carries strength, grace, and precision. Dorothy reflected on the countless ways her fingers had served her. Threading needles, turning pages, tapping keys, stirring batter, and holding the hands of loved ones. Each stretch was a gentle dialogue with her body, a reminder that even small, often overlooked movements ripple through the body, supporting both daily life and creative expression. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Dorothy committed to performing finger stretches for a few minutes during every reading session, turning quiet moments into mindful movement. Second, she paired stretches with slow, intentional breathing, inhaling as she extended fingers and exhaling as she curled them, fostering calm and awareness. Third, she experimented with subtle variations, flexing fingers individually, making tiny circles at each knuckle, gently pressing fingertips together, or massaging palms between stretches. These small adjustments kept the exercise safe, engaging, and highly adaptable for seniors. As she moved, Dorothy noticed the quiet details around her, the soft rustle of pages turning, the warmth of sunlight spilling across the armchair, and the faint aroma of tea mingling with the scent of her old book. Ordinary elements became cinematic companions to her practice, transforming a simple exercise into a ritual of presence, mindfulness, and sensory engagement. Each finger stretch was more than physical movement, it was a meditation, a quiet celebration of the dexterity and utility of her hands, and a connection to decades of living fully and intentionally. Subtle changes became apparent within days. Dorothy felt her fingers less stiff, her grip more secure, and her movements more fluid while performing daily tasks. The habitual tightness and minor discomfort that had slowed her typing, cooking, and knitting softened, replaced by warmth, dexterity, and presence. She realized that even these small, often overlooked movements could ripple through the body, enhancing comfort, coordination, and confidence in everyday life. A gentle philosophical reflection emerged. Our smallest tools, fingers, joints, and subtle movements, often carry the greatest potential for presence and skill. When nurtured with attention and consistency, even tiny gestures ripple through the body, creating dexterity, ease, and mindfulness. Dorothy smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in her practice. She discovered that care need not be dramatic or strenuous. Consistent, mindful attention to small details creates profound cumulative benefits. As she continued, Dorothy reflected on the history. Her fingers carried the hours spent knitting scarves for grandchildren, scribbling letters to friends, crafting meals with care, and gently turning pages of books that expanded her mind and spirit. Each stretch became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of effort, creativity, and love, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with fluidity and awareness. The exercise, though subtle, created a sense of empowerment and agency, proof that even the smallest, consistent actions could improve life's quality, one movement at a time. By the time the afternoon sunlight softened, Dorothy felt grounded, alert, and quietly empowered. Her fingers felt lighter, her hands more responsive, and her awareness of subtle movements more acute. The ordinary act of stretching her fingers while reading had become a cinematic ritual of mindfulness, presence, and gentle care. She whispered to herself, "It's remarkable how such simple attention to my hands can ripple through every part of my day." She raised her arms toward the first light, feeling the warmth of the sun stretch into her limbs like liquid gold. Evelyn stepped onto her back porch, the cool morning air brushing against her face, carrying the gentle scent of dew-soaked grass. The first light of dawn painted the horizon in soft golds and pinks, and the quiet chorus of birdsong filled the garden. Today, she decided to try a morning sun salute, a gentle flowing sequence, inspired by Japanese elders that combines mindful stretching, movement, and awareness of the body in space. The practice wasn't about performance, competition, or intensity. It was about honoring her body, greeting the day, and cultivating energy and presence. She inhaled deeply, raising her arms overhead, feeling the warmth of the sun seep into her fingertips. I never realized mornings could feel so alive, she reflected. A personal insight mingled with gratitude. Each stretch, each lift of the arms, each subtle bend and lengthening was cinematic, in its own right, a slow choreography between body, light, and air. As she moved, Evelyn felt her spine elongate, her shoulders open, and a gentle ripple of energy flow through her legs, arms, and core. It was as if each movement was a bridge between her past, present, and the possibilities of the day ahead. Evelyn's mini-story unfolded as she flowed through the sequence, reaching upward, then bending gently toward her toes, shifting her weight onto her toes and heels, and finally returning upright with arms extended, palms facing the sun. According to many studies, gentle morning stretches can enhance circulation, improve flexibility, support posture, and awaken energy, especially for older adults. But Evelyn didn't need science to feel it. The subtle tingling in her fingertips, the lightness in her chest, and the gentle pulse of warmth along her spine were proof enough. The ritual became both physical and meditative, a daily acknowledgement of her body's resilience and capacity for renewal. The metaphor was vivid. Her body was like a flower unfurling in the morning light. For decades, she had bent, twisted, and curled for work, family, and daily life. Sometimes stiff, sometimes weary, but always capable of opening again when nurtured. Each movement in the morning sun salute was a small act of blooming, a conscious choice to awaken, expand, and embrace vitality. The sequence reminded her that energy isn't found in grand feats, it's cultivated through attention, presence, and gentle consistency. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Evelyn committed to performing the sun salute each morning for 5 to 10 minutes, a ritual seamlessly integrated into her daily routine. Second, she synchronized her breath with each motion, inhaling as she extended upward, exhaling as she bent or shifted, creating a flowing rhythm of energy and awareness. Third, she explored subtle variations, lifting one arm higher while grounding the opposite foot, lengthening the torso at the peak of the stretch, or gently rotating her neck to greet the morning sky. These small adjustments allowed her practice to feel both safe and expansive, engaging multiple muscle groups while staying gentle and mindful. As Evelyn moved, she noticed ordinary details that became extraordinary companions to her ritual. The shimmer of dew on the grass, the distant hum of traffic muted by morning quiet, the soft sway of tree branches in a breeze, and the faint aroma of jasmine from the neighbor's garden. Each element became part of the cinematic tableau, a living, breathing world that intertwined seamlessly with her gentle movements. The ordinary act of stretching and moving became extraordinary through attention, awareness, and gratitude. Subtle changes became evident over time. She felt her spine lighter, her posture more aligned, and her energy calmer yet more present. Morning stiffness faded, replaced by fluidity and ease in walking, bending, and daily activity. Evelyn noticed her mental clarity sharpen, her moods lift, and her sense of agency deepen. She realized that small, consistent movements like the morning sun salute ripple outward, improving not only the body, but also the mind, spirit, and capacity to engage fully with each day. A philosophical reflection emerged naturally. Every day is a chance to awaken, to stretch beyond stiffness and habit, and to greet life with intention. Small, mindful movements are like morning light. They illuminate, warm, and create a space for energy, presence, and joy. Evelyn smiled, savoring the quiet power of her ritual. She understood that caring for her body was an ongoing story, written in gentle stretches, mindful breaths, and the presence she brought to each day. As she continued, Evelyn reflected on the history. Her body carried the long walks with friends, the arms lifted in dance, the hands and feet that had labored in work, gardening, and caregiving. Each movement in the sun salute became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of decades of activity, endurance, and love, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with freedom and energy. The practice, though gentle, created a profound sense of empowerment and agency, proof that consistent, mindful attention could transform ordinary mornings into cinematic experiences of renewal. The sequence ended with arms extended toward the rising sun, palms open, and eyes softly closed. Evelyn felt a deep sense of connection to her body, her breath, and the world around her. The ritual had transformed a simple stretch into a cinematic meditation, a daily celebration of vitality, presence, and self-care. She whispered to herself, even in the smallest, gentlest movements, there is power, light, and renewal. As Olen, looking back on the series of movements she had explored, spinal twists, shoulder shrugs, neck rolls, ankle circles, finger stretches, Evelyn appreciated how small, consistent practices layered into a rich tapestry of care and energy. Each gesture, often overlooked, had contributed to a sense of fluidity, resilience, and mindful presence. The morning sun salute was not the final step but the culmination, the conscious acknowledgement that vitality arises not from dramatic feats but from daily attention, gentle awareness, and the quiet commitment to movement, presence, and care. By the time the sun fully rose, bathing the garden in light, Evelyn felt grounded, vibrant, and quietly empowered. Her body was alert yet relaxed, her mind calm yet engaged, and her spirit buoyed by the simple act of greeting the day. The ordinary act of stretching into the sun had become cinematic, transformative, and profoundly grounding, a gentle reminder that energy, presence, and resilience are cultivated through care, attention, and mindful consistency. He let out a soft sigh as he stretched his arms overhead, the fading sunlight draping the room in amber serenity. Harold eased into his favorite armchair by the living room window, the room bathed in the warm glow of twilight. Outside, the wind whispered softly through the trees, carrying a hint of autumn leaves and distant city hum. After a full day of errands, walking, and cooking, he felt the familiar tightness settling into his shoulders and lower back, a gentle reminder that decades of movement, work, and life had left their traces. Tonight, he decided to practice evening wind-down stretches, inspired by simple, Japanese elder routines, gentle, flowing movements designed to release tension, calm the mind, and prepare the body for rest. He raised his arms slowly above his head, interlacing his fingers, stretching toward the ceiling as if reaching for the last rays of sunlight. I didn't realize how much I hold in these shoulders, he reflected, a quiet personal insight tinged with gratitude and curiosity. Each movement was deliberate and slow, cinematic in its unfolding, a choreography of breath, stretch, and presence. As he folded forward, stretching toward his toes, he felt the spine lengthen, the muscles release, and a subtle wave of calm ripple through his body. Even as he moved, he allowed himself to notice the gentle creaks and sighs of his own body, soundtracks to a lifetime of living. Harold's mini-story continued as he transitioned into gentle side stretches, leaning slowly from one side to the other, feeling his obliques expand and contract like sails catching the evening breeze. According to many studies, stretching before bed can help reduce stiffness, improve circulation, and promote relaxation, particularly for older adults. Yet, for Harold, the evidence was not just in theory, it was tangible. His shoulders loosened, his chest opened, and the familiar tension in his lower back eased. Each stretch was an acknowledgement, a moment of quiet gratitude to the body that had carried him faithfully through decades of life. The metaphor became vivid. His body was like an accordion, compressed by years of routine, stress, and activity. Each stretch expanded the bellows gently, releasing stored tension, allowing air, energy, and ease to flow through. His movements were not about intensity or achievement, they were about honoring flexibility, patience, and presence. The wind-down stretches reminded Harold that even at the end of a long day, small, mindful movements can create calm, release, and a sense of renewal that carries quietly into rest. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Harold committed to performing 3 to 5 minutes of these stretches every evening, turning the ritual of returning home into a mindful, restorative routine. Second, he paired each stretch with slow, intentional breathing, inhaling as he extended, and exhaling as he folded or leaned, fostering calm, awareness, and mindful relaxation. Third, he explored subtle variations, gently rotating the shoulders in circles, pressing fingertips against each other to stretch the wrists, and bending slightly at the knees when folding forward to reduce strain. These small adjustments made the exercise accessible, safe, and effective for seniors of all mobility levels. As Harold moved, He noticed details that turned ordinary stretches into cinematic moments. The soft glow of the evening sky through the window, the subtle scent of fallen leaves from a crack in the doorway, the muted creak of floorboards under the gentle sway of his movements, and the distant laughter of children playing nearby. These everyday elements transformed into companions, weaving a tapestry of sensory richness that deepened the experience. The ordinary act of stretching became extraordinary through attention, awareness, and presence, a gentle reminder that care for the body is inseparable from appreciation of the world around us. Subtle changes became evident within a few evenings. Harold felt tension in his shoulders and back lessen, circulation improve in his hands and feet, and his mental state shift toward calm and reflection. The habitual stiffness that often lingered from long days softened, replaced by a gentle sense of ease and alignment. He realized that even these small, consistent movements ripple through the body, enhancing comfort, mobility, and mental clarity. A philosophical reflection emerged. Evening is not just the close of a day, it's an opportunity to honor our bodies, release tension, and cultivate calm for the next chapter. Small, mindful movements allow the day to settle gently within us, carrying peace, presence, and awareness into the night. Harold smiled softly, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in these moments. He discovered that caring for the body in small, consistent ways is a lifelong conversation, one that deepens with each mindful gesture, breath, and stretch. As he transitioned to seated twists and gentle neck rotations, Harold reflected on the history his body carried: the hands that built, the arms that lifted, the legs that carried him across decades of daily life. Each stretch became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of endurance, work, and care, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with awareness and calm. The practice, though subtle, created a profound sense of empowerment, reminding him that even small, consistent actions could improve rest, mobility, and mental clarity. By the time the sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving a soft violet hue across the sky, Harold felt grounded, calm, and quietly empowered. His muscles were relaxed, his posture softened yet aligned, and his mind ready for rest. The ordinary act of performing evening wind-down stretches had become cinematic, transformative, and deeply restorative, a gentle reminder that energy, presence, and resilience can be cultivated even in the simplest of routines. He whispered to himself, "Even at the end of the day, small gestures of care ripple through my body, my mind, and my life." The stretches had become not only a physical practice, but a daily meditation, a ritual of reflection, release, and gratitude. They were the quiet punctuation at the end of each day, a final, cinematic bow to the ongoing story of movement, presence, and mindful self-care. She sat tall, her spine stretching like a ribbon unwinding, each breath drawing her into the quiet of the morning. Margaret settled into her sturdy dining chair, the kind that had seen countless breakfasts, conversations, and quiet afternoons. Morning light spilled softly through the kitchen window, painting the room in gentle hues of cream and gold. After years of leaning over desks, books, and knitting projects, she had noticed a gradual rounding of her shoulders and a subtle forward tilt of her neck. Today, she decided to practice gentle chair yoga, a simple, Japanese elder-inspired routine aimed at improving posture, opening the chest, and gently stretching the spine, all while seated. She began by grounding her feet firmly on the floor, aligning her knees over her ankles, and gently pressing her sit bones into the chair. Inhaling, she lifted her arms overhead, letting the spine elongate naturally. Exhaling, she slowly folded forward, keeping the shoulders soft and relaxed. "I never realized how much I miss standing tall until I feel it again," she reflected, a personal insight mingled with gratitude and curiosity. Each movement was slow, deliberate, cinematic, a quiet unfolding of awareness and presence. Margaret's mini-story continued as she rotated her shoulders in soft circles, then reached one arm overhead while gently leaning to the opposite side, feeling the stretch ripple along her ribs and back. According to many studies, seated yoga and gentle spinal stretches can improve posture, reduce tension, and enhance mobility in older adults. Yet for Margaret, the evidence was most tangible in the subtle warmth spreading across her shoulders, the lightness in her chest, and the gentle relief along her spine. Each gesture was an acknowledgement of the body's history and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with comfort and poise. The metaphor was vivid. Her spine was like a well-worn garden trellis, strong yet sometimes bending under years of growth. Left unattended, it can sag or twist. Nurtured, it supports life, movement, and structure with elegance and stability. Each gentle stretch was a conversation with her body, a recognition of its strength, resilience, and capacity for alignment. Margaret realized that posture isn't just about appearance, it's a bridge between body, breath, and daily vitality. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Margaret committed to performing 3 to 5 minutes of chair yoga each morning, turning idle moments at the table into a ritual of mindful movement. Second, she paired stretches with conscious breathing, inhaling as she lifted or extended, exhaling as she folded or rotated, fostering relaxation and awareness. Third, she explored subtle variations, gently rotating her torso while keeping the hips grounded, lifting the chest toward the ceiling, and pressing the shoulder blades together lightly during arm lifts. These small adjustments allowed her to engage the muscles, supporting posture safely and effectively. As she moved, Margaret noticed quiet details that transformed the ordinary into the cinematic: the sun warming the tabletop, the hum of morning appliances, the faint aroma of coffee drifting from the counter, and the gentle rustle of leaves outside. These everyday elements became companions to her practice, deepening the sensory richness and presence in the room. Chair yoga, she realized, was not just physical exercise, it was a moment of mindfulness, a meditation in motion, and a celebration of the body's capacity for alignment and grace. Subtle changes became apparent within days. Margaret felt her shoulders open, her neck lengthen, and her upper back less tense. She noticed a new awareness of her posture while walking, standing, and sitting, as well as a gentle steadiness in her balance. These small, consistent movements rippled outward, improving comfort, mobility, and confidence in daily activities. She realized that caring for her spine and posture was not a chore but a gift she could give herself each day. A philosophical reflection emerged naturally. Even small, gentle attention to posture changes the way we inhabit our bodies and the world. When we take time to align, stretch, and breathe, we reclaim space, presence, and comfort. Margaret smiled softly, appreciating the quiet wisdom in her practice. She understood that care doesn't have to be dramatic, it is cumulative, subtle, and profound when performed consistently over time. As she continued with seated twists and gentle forward folds, Margaret reflected on the history. Her spine carried the long hours spent reading to her children, typing letters to friends, preparing meals, and simply navigating the rhythms of daily life. Each stretch became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of effort, endurance, and care, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with awareness and poise. The practice, though gentle, created a quiet sense of empowerment and agency, proof that even small, consistent actions could improve posture, mobility, and confidence. By the time Margaret finished, the morning light had brightened, spilling across the kitchen floor and casting a soft glow on her arms and shoulders. She felt taller, calmer, and quietly empowered. The ordinary act of performing gentle chair yoga had become cinematic, transformative, and deeply restorative, a gentle reminder that strength, alignment, and presence can be cultivated even in simple, daily movements. She whispered to herself, "Even from a chair, I can stand tall in my own body and presence." These stretches were not merely exercises, they were rituals of mindfulness, awareness, and respect for the body's capacity. Each gentle movement reinforced her connection to herself, her breath, and the space she inhabited, creating a foundation for comfort, grace, and vitality throughout the day. He swirled his hips gently, feeling the small, circular rhythm awaken a part of him long forgotten. George lowered himself carefully onto a sturdy kitchen chair, one he had long used for casual reading, light stretching, and quiet reflection. The late morning sun streamed in through the window, highlighting the subtle dust motes floating lazily in the air. Today, he had decided to focus on his hips, those quiet workhorses that had carried him through decades of walking, gardening, and life's many small adventures. Seated hip circles, a practice embraced by Japanese elders, promised a gentle, flowing way to maintain flexibility, release tension, and foster mindfulness, all without leaving the comfort of a chair. He planted his feet firmly on the floor, feeling the grounding beneath him, and placed his hands lightly on his thighs. Slowly, he began to rotate his hips in gentle, circular motions, first clockwise, then counterclockwise. Each motion was deliberate, a small arc of presence and awareness that reached through his core. I never realized how stiff these hips had become until I moved them like this, he reflected quietly, a personal insight mingled with gentle amusement. Each circle was cinematic, a subtle dance of joints, muscles, and connective tissue rediscovering freedom. George's mini story unfolded further as he leaned slightly forward and backward with each rotation, feeling the stretch radiate through his lower back and pelvic region. According to many studies, maintaining hip mobility is crucial for seniors to preserve balance, walking ease, and general mobility. But for George, the true proof lay in the gentle ease, returning to his movements, the subtle warmth spreading through his core, and the small sense of liberation as tension released from hips that had long carried him silently, efficiently, and faithfully. In the reason twos, we had I and C's of innovations, without and the sign-in, we had I connextines, we had I number 7 tension, with Rauration, with use and tension, without RA, and that, with ration, without RH, with the metaphor was vivid. His hips were like the hinges of an old, cherished gate. Years of bending, lifting, and standing had made them stiff, but with gentle attention and consistent movement, they could swing freely again, opening pathways to comfort and agility. Each rotation, no matter how small, reminded George that even quiet, often overlooked joints play an essential role in the story of movement and life. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, George committed to performing seated hip circles for 5 minutes each morning, treating it as a ritual to honor his body's foundation. Second, he synchronized his breath with the rotations: inhale as the hips traced forward, exhale as they curved back, creating a gentle rhythm that carried energy through the body and calmed the mind. Third, he experimented with subtle variations, widening the circles slightly, rotating one hip at a time, or lightly engaging the core for balance. These small adjustments kept the exercise safe, engaging, and highly adaptable for older adults with varying degrees of mobility. As George moved, he noticed cinematic details around him: the subtle sway of the curtains in the morning breeze, the gentle chirping of birds in the yard, the distant hum of a neighbor mowing the lawn, and the faint scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Ordinary elements transformed into companions, adding layers of sensory richness and presence to his practice. Seated hip circles became not just a physical exercise but a meditation, a conversation between body and environment, and a celebration of movement itself. Subtle changes began to emerge within days. George felt the stiffness in his hips soften, his lower back loosen, and his overall flexibility improve. He noticed more ease in standing, walking, and climbing stairs, along with a lightness in his step that reminded him of years past. These small, consistent movements rippled through his day, enhancing both physical comfort and mental clarity. He realized that mobility isn't just built through dramatic exercise, it's cultivated through mindful, gentle attention to joints, muscles, and rhythm. A philosophical reflection emerged naturally. Our bodies are not static, they are meant to move, turn, and flow. Even small, deliberate circles can release tension, invite flexibility, and reconnect us to the joy of motion. George smiled softly, appreciating the quiet wisdom embedded in these simple gestures. He understood that consistent, mindful attention to even small, often overlooked joints could have profound effects on overall well-being and daily ease. As he continued, George reflected on the history carried by his hips, the long walks with friends, bending to plant flowers, climbing ladders to hang lights, and standing to greet grandchildren at their eye level. Each rotation became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of endurance, service, and the passage of time. The practice, though subtle, created a quiet sense of empowerment, reminding him that even small, consistent actions could maintain flexibility, improve posture, and enhance the joy of movement. By the time George finished, the morning sun had climbed higher, bathing the room in golden light. He felt grounded, supple, and quietly invigorated. The ordinary act of performing seated hip circles had transformed into a cinematic ritual of presence, reflection, and bodily awareness, a gentle reminder that even the simplest, smallest movements hold transformative power when performed with attention and care. He whispered to himself, "Even small circles can open freedom and ease in ways I never imagined." The hip circles were more than exercises, they were acts of gratitude, celebration, and reconnection with his body's wisdom. Each rotation reinforced his awareness, mobility, and capacity to inhabit daily life fully and gracefully. She rolled her wrists slowly, feeling a river of subtle energy flow from fingertips to elbows. Here's offerments, here's offerments, here's offerments, from one with tenable. Here's offerments, from one whence. Here's offerments, here's offerments, from one when. Here's offerments, here's offerments, here's offerments, here's offerments. Linda perched on the edge of her cushioned dining chair, the soft morning sun spilling across her hands and arms. Over the years, typing, cooking, and crafting had left her wrists stiff and occasionally achy. Today, she decided to practice gentle wrist and forearm rotations, a movement embraced by Japanese elders to improve joint flexibility, strengthen connective tissues, and maintain the small but essential muscles of the hands and forearms. Though the movements were subtle, she approached them with full attention, treating them as a ritual, a quiet celebration of strength in her hands that had long served her faithfully. She extended her arms in front of her, palms facing down, and slowly rotated her wrists, clockwise, then counterclockwise, each motion deliberate and unhurried. "I didn't realize how often I take these joints for granted until I move them this way," she reflected, a personal insight tinged with gentle amusement. Each rotation became cinematic, a visual flow of small arcs and curves, a quiet choreography between motion, awareness, and breath. The subtle hum of morning filled the room, punctuating each twist and turn of her hands. Linda's mini-story continued as she flexed and extended her fingers with each rotation, noticing how the tension and stiffness in her forearms eased. According to many studies, regular wrist and forearm mobility exercises help maintain strength, reduce stiffness, and support daily tasks for older adults. Yet for Linda, science wasn't needed to feel the benefits. The warmth spreading across her forearms, the subtle release in her wrists, and the renewed dexterity in her fingers were proof enough. These small rotations reminded her that strength is not always loud or dramatic. It can be quiet, subtle, and deeply transformative. The metaphor became vivid. Her forearms were like the rigging on a sailboat, strong, flexible lines that transmit energy, support, and precision, capable of bearing loads and adjusting to winds, yet easily forgotten when motion becomes habitual. Each rotation, each flex, was a tuning of those lines, maintaining integrity, responsiveness, and strength. She realized that maintaining the small joints was essential, not only for function, but for the quiet joy of movement, the tactile connection to daily life, whether holding a mug, turning a page, or folding laundry. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Linda committed to performing these rotations twice daily, morning and evening, turning idle moments at her kitchen table into a ritual of mindfulness and strength. Second, she synchronized each motion with her breath. Inhale as she flexed outward. Exhale as she rotated inward, cultivating awareness, relaxation, and subtle energy flow. Third, she incorporated light variations, gently opening and closing her fists, tracing small circles with each finger, and rotating her forearms from elbow to wrist. These small adjustments allowed her to engage the muscles safely, improve circulation, and maintain joint flexibility. As she moved, Linda noticed ordinary details transforming into cinematic companions. The warm sunlight highlighting the contours of her hands, the subtle hum of a distant lawnmower, the aroma of morning coffee wafting from the kitchen, and the occasional bird call through the open window. Each sensory element deepened her awareness and presence, turning a simple wrist exercise into a mindful, cinematic meditation. Through attention and care, she realized that even the smallest movements could carry profound meaning and effect. Subtle changes began to emerge within a few days. Linda noticed her wrists and forearms felt lighter, her grip steadier, and daily tasks easier. Turning jars, typing, or holding a book no longer triggered stiffness. These small, consistent movements rippled outward, enhancing comfort, dexterity, and confidence. She understood that strength and mobility are not built only in gyms or with heavy equipment, they are cultivated in the quiet, mindful attention we give to our bodies every day. A philosophical reflection emerged naturally. Even the smallest joints, often overlooked, carry the weight of our daily lives. Caring for them is a gesture of respect, presence, and foresight. Linda smiled, appreciating the quiet wisdom in these subtle motions. Strength isn't always measured in pounds or repetitions. Sometimes, it is felt in the freedom to turn, lift, and hold without pain or hesitation. As she continued, Linda reflected on the history in her hands and forearms. The hours spent knitting scarves for loved ones, typing letters to distant friends, cooking meals for family, and lifting grandchildren with care. Each rotation became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of endurance, service, and resilience, and an invitation to inhabit the present moment with strength and grace. The practice, though subtle, created a quiet sense of empowerment and agency, proof that small, consistent actions could maintain flexibility, strength, and independence. By the time Linda finished her rotations, the morning had deepened, casting longer shadows across the kitchen floor. She felt grounded, connected, and quietly empowered. The ordinary act of performing wrist and forearm rotations had become cinematic, transformative, and deeply restorative. A gentle reminder that strength, presence, and resilience can be cultivated even in the smallest, simplest movements. She whispered to herself, "Even the smallest joints hold the power to carry me through life." These rotations were more than exercises, they were acts of gratitude, celebration, and reconnection with the body's wisdom. Each subtle movement reinforced her ability to engage fully in daily life, enhancing her dexterity, independence, and confidence. She let her shoulders melt into gentle circles, each roll releasing the weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. Eleanor sank into her favorite living room armchair, the one by the window where the morning light streamed warmly across her lap. After a night of light tossing and turning, she felt the familiar stiffness in her neck and shoulders, a gentle reminder of years spent reading, knitting, and caring for a bustling family. Today, she decided to focus on neck and shoulder rolls, inspired by Japanese elder routines that encourage relaxation, improved mobility, and gentle stress relief. Though simple in appearance, these movements promised subtle, restorative benefits she could feel immediately. She lifted her shoulders slowly toward her ears, inhaling deeply, then exhaled as she rolled them back and down in slow, deliberate circles. "I never realized how much tension I hold here until I let it go," she reflected softly, a personal insight mingled with curiosity and relief. Each roll became cinematic, a gentle dance of joints, muscles, and breath, synchronized with the soft hum of the morning world. Eleanor felt her shoulders begin to lighten, her posture lengthen, and her neck release tension that had been quietly accumulating for decades. Eleanor's mini-story unfolded further as she began small neck rotations, tilting gently from side to side and slowly tracing semicircles with her chin toward her chest and then upward. According to many studies, regular neck and shoulder movements can reduce stiffness, improve posture, and relieve mild tension for older adults. Yet, Eleanor didn't need studies to notice the difference. She felt it in the gentle warmth radiating through her trapezius muscles, the ease of movement in her cervical spine, and the subtle sense of release washing through her upper body. These simple gestures reminded her that care doesn't need to be complex, it just needs to be consistent and mindful. The metaphor became vivid. Her shoulders and neck were like the masts of a sailboat. When rigid and tense, they make movement stiff and slow. When relaxed and supple, they allow the sails to catch wind smoothly and efficiently. Each roll and tilt restored a natural fluidity, a rhythm of motion that supported her entire frame. Eleanor realized that these small, deliberate movements were not only about flexibility, they were about creating harmony, balance, and ease in the way she carried herself every day. Practical, gentle solutions emerged naturally. First, Eleanor committed to performing neck and shoulder rolls twice daily, once in the morning and once in the evening, treating them as moments of presence and self-care. Second, she synchronized the movements with her breath, inhaling as she lifted or tilted, exhaling as she rolled or released, cultivating calm and mindful awareness. Third, she explored subtle variations, alternating slow rolls with small stretches of the trapezius, gently tilting the head to one side while extending the opposite arm slightly, and softening the jaw to release tension. These small adjustments ensured safety, accessibility, and effectiveness for seniors of all mobility levels. As she moved, Eleanor noticed ordinary details transforming into cinematic companions: the sunlight glinting on the windowsill, the quiet ticking of a clock, the scent of brewed tea from the kitchen, and the distant chirping of sparrows. These everyday elements enhanced her sensory awareness, turning a simple exercise into a meditative practice. Through attention and care, she realized that even the gentlest movements can have profound effects when performed mindfully. Subtle changes emerged quickly. Eleanor felt her shoulders open, her neck lengthen, and her posture naturally improve. She noticed more comfort while turning her head, bending, or reaching for objects. The stiffness that often lingered at the end of the day softened, replaced by a gentle sense of ease and alignment. These small, consistent movements rippled outward, enhancing physical comfort, reducing stress, and even fostering mental clarity. She discovered that relaxation, mobility, and presence are cultivated in the quiet attention we give our bodies daily. A philosophical reflection emerged naturally. The places we hold tension often carry more than just physical weight. They hold stories, responsibilities, and memories. Releasing them gently is not just care for the body, it is care for the self. Eleanor smiled softly, appreciating the subtle wisdom in these slow, deliberate movements. Strength, flexibility, and relief are not always found in dramatic effort. They are often nurtured through quiet, mindful practice. As she continued, Eleanor reflected on the history in her neck and shoulders, the long hours spent reading to her children, knitting blankets late into the evening, reaching to lift grandchildren into her arms, and bending to tend a garden. Each role became symbolic, a conscious acknowledgement of effort, endurance, and love. The practice, though gentle, created a quiet sense of empowerment and agency, proof that small, consistent movements could improve relaxation, posture, and overall well-being. By the time Eleanor finished, the morning had grown brighter, the light spilling across the floor and warming her arms and shoulders. She felt grounded, calm, and quietly revitalized. The ordinary act of performing neck and shoulder rolls had transformed into a cinematic ritual of presence, reflection, and bodily awareness, a gentle reminder that even the smallest movements hold transformative power when approached with attention and care. She whispered to herself, "Even the smallest rolls can release the weight of years and open space for ease and presence." The movements were more than exercises, they were acts of gratitude, reflection, and reconnection with her body's innate wisdom. Each subtle rotation reinforced her capacity to engage fully in daily life, enhancing flexibility, comfort, and confidence.